Hello, my name is Yevgen, and I'm a software engineering test and tool infrastructure team. This video is to walk through Product Analytics end-to-end test setup and what's its current state. So let's get into it. First of all, I wanted to quickly go through Product Analytics architecture. So there are three high-level components is application that has Product Analytics SDKs integrated. So it could be a customer application that has our SDKs integrated, and a project is hosted on GitLab. Then it is Product Analytics stack that can be hosted on Google Cloud platform, for example, and its GitLab instance that will show dashboards and show data on those dashboards for Product Analytics. So how it works. So as an example, our customer can run an application that has SDK integrated, and when their users click a button on that application, button click is just an example, like there are many things that can trigger an event, and we can actually configure when we want to trigger it using our SDKs. And basically, again, when user clicks a button that may trigger event, let's say it does trigger, so we configured it in that way. Event will be sent to Product Analytics stack Snowplow collector. It will then be sent to Kafka, will be enriched by Snowplow enricher. After next service vector will pull event from Kafka, and it will write it to our ClickHouse data store. That's how events end up in data store. Next step will be for GitLab instance to get that events from data store and represent it on dashboards. For that, we will enable Product Analytics on GitLab project. Once enabled, there will be predefined dashboard, and once we open that dashboard, it will trigger a query using Cube to a data store. And that query will return results, and we will display those on GitLab project dashboards. That's basically the flow. You can see another component, Analytics Configurator here. This component is here to allow us enable Product Analytics for specific projects, and it will create a first state of Product Analytics for that project. For example, it will create necessary databases in our data store, and will track application ID that can be used by SDKs to send event for that project. I hope that makes sense. So next part is how we run end-to-end tests for Product Analytics. So to run end-to-end tests for Product Analytics, we need at least 3 and sometimes 4 components. So 3 required components is tests themselves, GitLab instance that we can run using GitLab JDK image, GitLab Development Kit, and Product Analytics services. Then optional component would be example apps. We only need this component when we want to trigger event from example apps that have our SDKs integrated with them. So for example, when we want to check that events from browser SDKs end up on dashboards and are processed by analytics correctly, we would need browser SDK application. Same for Python, Ruby, Node.js, .NET applications. So let's now look a little bit deeper into each component. So for tests, I have a link here. Our tests are source code is in GitLab repository, and here you can see full pass to the tests. Currently, we can see that there are 8 specs. It's the browser SDK, .NET SDK events, Node SDK events, Ruby SDK events, custom dashboard creation, also custom dashboard edit, and creation of custom visualization for product analytics. There is one more test that soon will be added, is Python SDK events test. Then GTK image, I have a link here as well. GTK image is built from GitLab /QA directory in GitLab project. There is a Docker file that describes how exactly it will be built. And once it's built, it's available in container registry for GitLab. So that's how we will get GTK image, and we will host GitLab for our tests using that image. After that, let's look at product analytics services. We will run product analytics services for end-to-end test using product analytics dev kit. There are configurations for these services, and there is a Docker Compose file that describes how to start these services and some configurations for Docker containers there. And going to the fourth component, it's example apps. They are created in each SDK. So for example, this is a browser SDK, and we have example vanilla.js, which is example application of browser SDK. This application is Dockerized, and every time we have a new version of SDK, it will build new Docker image for example app that will use that version. And it will also store it in a container registry, but in this case for that SDK repository. So that's how our tests will be able to get example apps. They will pull a Docker image of example app and will start a container using that image. And this will pass the necessary configurations in environment variables for that container. Okay, so that's the components for end-to-end tests, and we can go a little bit deeper. So in details of the setup. Let's start with the test. We'll go to example test, which is browser SDK event spec. So we can see that this test checks that product analytics displays events that were sent from browser SDK. The test will have presetup to create group and project in that group. Then we will log in to GitLab, activate product analytics for projects that we created before. After that, we will have application ID, and this is SDK application ID we can use to start example application. So in this case, we will start browser SDK application example, and we will pass SDK application ID. We will also pass SDK host because application needs to know where to send events. So this is a Snowflake collector host. We will get it from environment variable. After we initialize it, we can pull application image if it's not yet available on the machine. This logic is inside full method. And then register method will start Docker container using that image. And it will use these variables to know where to send events and what application ID to use. After it started, we will open a new tab and we navigate to the path that hosts this application. Here, the code for that method, and after we navigated there, we will accept cookies and we will click track event button, which will trigger an event. In this case, there will be actually two events because first event will be a page view event and second event will be click on a button. Once it's done, these events will go through pipeline. We also need to wait for dashboards list because this first time this project gets event and first event actually activates product analytics. So we will need to wait for it to be activated. Once activated, we will open predefined dashboard called the behavior dashboard, and we will check that indeed we have events on the dashboard and total events amount is 2. So that's a test example. Let's go to GDK image next. As I mentioned, it's in GitLab project, and it is built for every MR, and it's built on merge to master branch as well. So our test will have GDK image set up in them. I think we don't need to go into more details. We can discuss this separately. Next thing I want to show is SDK and example application details. So this is browser SDK, and here we have application. Let's go to index.js. So this is an application. We will pass product analytics collector URL and product analytics application ID to it. Because we use environment variables, we can set them when starting Docker image for this application. Here we can see that SDK uses these variables, and we can see that on button click, we have a code that will actually track an event. And here's simple Docker file for this example application that will build Docker image every time we have new version of SDK, and we will in the test we will pull that image. So next one is product analytics dev kit that helps us to run all the services. The things I wanted to show is how the test actually run the services of product analytics. So it's done using Docker Compose, and we have docker compose.end-to-end.yaml file. And it describes all services. It describes GDK, GitLab QA, which is GitLab. The name for this image is actually GitLab EE-QA. It has some configuration to allow us to run the tests, and it has a command that will actually run all the tests that are tagged with product group product analytics. It also describes services, the product analytics services that we need to start. And we can see that it actually extends them from Docker Compose YAML file. So let's open that file. That's Docker Compose YAML file. And we can see that it has more details how product analytics services start, which volumes they use, and which ports they use. In our tests, YAML, we just use that setup, so we don't need to repeat it. And the last thing I want to show is a merge request example for DevKit. So, for example, we want to upgrade Kafka version for DevKit. And this is what this MR does. We can go to pipelines. And there were some work here, but let's focus on the latest one. So there are 4 stages here. So cube stage is some specs for cube. Test stage is also our tests, but not end-to-end, just specific tests for DevKit. Then we have build stage where we will build analytics, what we call analytics GTK. This is basically taking GTK image and just have a small modifications to enable product analytics on that GTK. And at the end, we will run end-to-end tests. So let's go into that job. The job, we can see it will pull all the images to allow us to have GitLab, product analytics services, and tests available. We can see that pull is a lot of logs are for pulling those images actually. Once it pulled all the images, it will start containers using Docker Compose. And we can see that GitLab is running in this URL, and there is some pre-setup. And here we can see that first test has started. Here this one indicates that it passed, and so on. And then we will have all tests, and we will have the results. So in this case, it test passed, and we had 0 failures. So we know that the scenarios that we covered by end-to-end work when we upgrade Kafka to a newer version, which has helped. After all, I just wanted to show a demo of a test running not in CI, but on my machine, so we can see what it actually does in UI. Okay. For some reason, I can drag my command line. Okay, done. So to run a test, what we will need? We will need dev kits that we looked into before. There is some minor setup needed to allow it to run, but it's described in dev kit readme. So to run product analytics services, we will just need eventually a command Docker compose up. This will run all the services we talked about. Next part is that I have a GTK running on my machine, and it's connected to DevKit services. There is also setup that is mentioned in Docker, in DevKit README. And here I'm in the folder where the tests are, GitLab QA folder. So from this folder, I now can execute a browser SDK events spec as an example that we looked into. And I'll do that. So we can see that test is started, and it's using my GDK right now. There's some pre-setup, as I mentioned, creating project, setting product analytics settings for that project. And here we can see a product analytics activation. You can see application ID here, which we will use for sample app. Actually, sample app already opened in new tab. I just quickly show, I hope it doesn't break the test. So this track event button was clicked, just was very quick, which triggered an event for product analytics for this project. So after it's activated, you could see that dashboards were open and the test verified that amount of events is correct. And that's how it eventually passes. One thing I didn't mention, the tests do require few environment variables, and we can find those in documents. I'll just try to show it right now quickly. In DevKit, in docs folder, we have end-to-end test MD, and it describes in details how to run the tests. I think that will be it. I have some links in presentation that we can use. There's some links that we used in presentation and maybe some links that wasn't actually mentioned there, but are useful for product analytics end-to-end test setup. And that's everything from my side. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.